Hey y'all, and welcome back to the channel. Before I get started with this week's video, I wanted to let you know that the official Cheyenne Goldfish merchandise is now available, and I will link it below. So I did a poll on my Instagram recently about what today's video is going to be about. So 90% of the votes that were cast were for me to talk about fish store myths. I know a lot of fellow YouTubers have done this in the past, but I picked my top things that I hear often around here and online and so on. Also, within the goldfish community that newbies just don't understand is incorrect, or you know, a lot of, it's sad, but a lot of pet stores don't give new fish keepers good advice, and a lot of things that they say are just lies, and that's what this video is about. So the first thing is that goldfish can be put in bowls, and that's not true. Goldfish cannot be kept in bowls. You're not going to have a happy goldfish. They're not going to grow. They're not going to live very long either. They're going to probably pass very quickly. Without filters and air pumps, goldfish do not do well. And what happens in these bowls is, you have to understand, most of them are 1 gallon or less. And that's not very big at all. If I were to put one of my fish in a fish bowl, one is they won't fit, so that wouldn't do me any good. They do so much better in tanks, and I don't understand why pet stores tell you that you can keep them in bowls. I just don't understand the logic behind keeping a fish in any fish for that matter, in a bowl. I just don't. You're gonna have a ton of water quality issues, and honestly, in my opinion, it's animal abuse. And that's something that it's like, it's one of my pet peeves, is you just don't keep them in bowls. And I mean, it's just wrong. If the goldfish was small, say you had just a baby goldfish, you may be able to keep them in a 10 gallon with a ton of water changes, a good filter, and an air stone. But that's not going to last long. They're eventually going to start growing, they're going to get too big for the tank, and eventually ammonia, nitrate, nitrite's going to build up, and the fish is going to die. And that's just how this goes. Pet stores will tell you they can live in a 10 gallon, but they're not going to tell you the little things that happen after the goldfish starts growing. I know a lot of people often say that goldfish are more messy than other fish, and it's not necessarily true. It's not that they're more messy. It's the fact that they're larger than most fish, and they just produce more ammonia. Therefore, you have to do more water changes. So they can live in a 10 gallon. They probably won't live very comfortably, and you're gonna run into issues at some point. That's just the way that it's gonna be. I do not recommend keeping goldfish with anything other than other goldfish. And when you run into people, I know in my area I saw an employee was talking to a customer who had just decided that they wanted an aquarium, and they were going to get I think it was like a 20 gallon tank or something, and they were showing them mollies and tetras and the normal things that tend to go in like a community tank. Well, and the customer made the remark that she would rather have a few big fish, and so the employee immediately showed her to an Aranda goldfish. The employee told the customer that, you know, you could get 1 or 2 of these and put them with mollies and tetras and, you know, platies and all this stuff, and that is not true. You cannot do that. The goldfish is likely going to eat the mollies, the platies, and the tetras. That's just the way that it goes. Anything that is smaller than the goldfish, it's gonna eat, and that's the way that you know, nature is gonna take its course. I don't understand. I don't think the you know, the employee, I think, was, you know, just working at the store part-time, and they really had no idea what they were talking about. So, you know, after the employee walked away, I told the customer that goldfish can only be kept with goldfish, and she had no idea what cycling was. I mean, it was crazy, and I had to explain all this to her, and she ended up only getting one goldfish, which was fine. And it's just so sad that these employees really, you know, they're misguiding these customers, but they don't have a want to learn. And that's not all, that may not be all employees, but from what I've seen, they just don't care. And another thing I see here often is employees trying to sell PLECOS to goldfish owners. And that's the next thing that is a myth. PLECOS are not a good tank mate for goldfish. Generally what you'll have is at night the pleco will come out and, you know, start cleaning the tank, so to speak. End up sucking on the goldfish's slime coat, and it can, you know, introduce bacteria and infection and injury, and you're going to have an issue. And a lot of people don't see plecos as aggressive, and they're not, but it's the fact that they think the goldfish is something they need to clean, I guess. And that's not a good that's not a good pick for an algae eater in a goldfish tank. I have a few algae eaters, but the only ones that I will put with my goldfish are odos, and they generally do fine. I've never lost one to goldfish. I've never seen one, you know, I've never had one injure a goldfish. I've never had one even get near a goldfish. They are small but mighty. They can handle algae in an aquarium very well. And I've never had a goldfish try to eat one. So if you need an algae eater, then I would suggest an Odo. But if you have the time just to, you know, during water change to wipe down the inside of the aquarium with a algae scrubber, I mean, it takes like 2 minutes and it's not that big of a deal. So you can get away with not having an algae eater. You don't have to have an algae eater in any tank. I don't know why pet stores push that so much, but I mean, you could easily go without one. I have several tanks that don't have one just because I never got one for them, and it's really not a big deal. Plecos are not a good tank mate for goldfish. The fifth thing that I often hear is that you should throw away and replace your filter media monthly. And no. No, please do not do that. A lot of new fish keepers use filters that have the cartridges, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with those filters. I have two that I use in the Tetra aquarium, and I have those type of filters in my beta aquariums. And I'm not saying they're horrible filters. They're not. I have them and I'm happy with them. But you don't, when you have cycled an aquarium, there's bacteria that has grown in the filter that you do not want to get rid of. It's keeping the aquarium's ammonia levels and whatnot at bay. You need to keep that bacteria as long as you can. Generally what you should do is maybe with every water change you should take the filter out and rinse it to get all the gunk out and then put it back. I don't think that you should do not ever replace something unless it's no longer working. Like, if it's not broke, don't fix it. If it gets to the point where, you know, the filter is uncleanable and maybe it's falling apart, then I could understand where you'd want to replace that. That's fine. Generally, I have 2 running in one of the aquariums, and if I feel that I need to replace one, I only replace one and not the other. But I do not do that monthly. I'm talking, I do that like every 6 months or something. Like, it doesn't happen that way. So do not throw away any media unless you have to. If it's falling apart or, you know, something happens that way, then you really don't need to worry about it. I also hear people say that they have to have carbon in their aquarium, and that's not true. Carbon is not a need to filter your aquarium. Carbon simply removes tannins, and if you've added medication, it'll remove medication and things like that, but you do not have to have carbon. I don't have carbon in any of my aquariums right now, and they're fine. So that is another myth that I'm just throwing out there. You don't have to have carbon to have a clean aquarium. Another thing that drives me insane is when they say that you should only replace evaporated water. So you should really be doing water changes weekly, especially with goldfish. You should not be replacing evaporated water monthly. Obviously, whoever is telling you this has no idea what they're talking about, because they have no idea what ammonia is, more than likely. If you are not doing water changes, you are allowing ammonia, nitrate, nitrite to eventually creep up in the aquarium and cause issues for the fish. And a lot of people don't understand that these things can kill your fish. If you have a 10-gallon aquarium and you replace what's been evaporated in a month, that may be like 5 gallons if you're lucky. That's not enough. Even my betta fish get weekly water changes, and you're going to run into problems later if that's the only thing that you're doing. Along with water changes, they often will tell you that large water changes are bad for the fish, and that is completely untrue. I do large water changes once a week. I'm talking 80 to 100%. All that you really need to be sure of is that the temperature is somewhat close to what it is in the tank. So, you know, if your tank was sitting at 72 degrees, I would want it between 70 and 74, and they'll be fine. I don't generally like do a thermometer test. You know, I just feel with my hand, and if it's close, it's fine. Goldfish are not that picky with temperature, just as long as it's not a big temperature change. If you have a water changer like me, you know, you're siphoning the gravel and getting all the junk that's got stuck between the pebbles out, and you're also taking whatever ammonia or nitrate or whatever has acquired in this tank over that amount of time. And goldfish, you also have to remember that when you're adding water back into the tank, you're also replacing vitamins and minerals that live in the water back into the tank, and you want that. And so no, large water changes are not going to hurt your fish so long as the temperature is close. Especially on the goldfish forum, I often hear newbies say that they took their water to a local pet store and had it tested, and they'll say, well, they told me that my ammonia was in a safe zone. And first of all, there is no safe zone with ammonia. Any trace of ammonia is harmful for fish, any fish, not just goldfish. So if they ever tell you that something is safe zoned, it's not. I don't know where they get this. On test strips, they'll say from like 0 to 0.25. And they'll say, well, it's in a safe zone, but if it's 0, it's safe. If it's 0.15 or something that you don't know, because the test strip won't tell you that, it's not safe. That is very harmful for the fish. That's why I recommend that you use a drop kit such as the API Freshwater Master Test Kit. It gives you an exact number. You're not guessing. That's what I hate about test strips, is you don't know what that number is. So if you use the drops, then it'll tell you that your ammonia is 0.25. Then you'll know I need to do a water change because there's obviously something going on here, and my fish are going to suffer because of this if I do not take care of it. I assumed that everybody knew this, but apparently some people do not. And I hear that you do not have to use dechlorinator for tap water. Okay. Yes, you do. Because if you have tap water from city or whatever, they put chlorine in their water. I actually don't know of anybody around here that doesn't. That's just what you do. It kills off bacteria, and you know, that's how they clean the tap water. And if you don't dechlorinate that water, chlorine is very harmful for fish, any fish, not just goldfish. Doesn't matter what it is, it can kill them, and eventually it will if it's not taken out of the water. When a lot of people don't understand when you're doing water changes, that anytime you're putting water in the aquarium, you should be adding dechlorinator. Even with water changers, the water is going straight from my tap into the tank. So what I do is when I flip that water changer over to start putting water in, is I'll take my prime and I'll measure out how many gallons the tank is, and it's usually, I think a cap full is treats 50 gallons of water. So I'll do a cap full, like this one back here is 50 gallons, so I'll do a full cap and then it'll fill up and it's fine. Sometimes I do it a little more. It's not going to hurt them, but you want to make sure that you do dechlorinate your tap water. Well water is a different story. That depends on if you put chlorine in your well water. I mean, I've never used well water, so I can't really talk about that very much. I have heard it's very acidic, and that's not that great with goldfish, but I'm not an expert on well water, so can't really tell you that. Goldfish can live a very long time if they're taken care of. You know, Johnny lived for 14 years, and I've known other fish keepers that have kept goldfish, you know, over 20 years. It's if you take care of them, they will live longer, which is the same thing for it's the same thing for anything, really. Goldfish and koi are not the same thing, and I don't really know where that came from. They are from the same family, like cousins in the goldfish family, but they're not the same thing. And, you know, koi should never ever be kept in an aquarium. Goldfish get big, but koi get bigger. I'm talking like 2 and 3 feet long. They should never be in an aquarium. Koi should only be kept in ponds. Goldfish have a 3-second memory. No. Goldfish can have a very long memory. I'm not sure who came up with a 3-second memory, but that's incorrect. It's actually been scientifically proven that goldfish can remember sometimes a year ago. I mean, if they couldn't remember, then, you know, my goldfish recognize my face. If I walk around their aquarium, they come to me. If I stick my hand in the aquarium, they come up to me. They know when feeding time is. When I get up in the morning, they are all up at the top of the tank. They're watching for me. They know when I come through, they're going to get fed. If you're like a Knight over here, if he doesn't get fed on time, he will go to the surface of the water and bang his head against the glass until I feed it. That's the way he does. And, you know, if they had 3-second memory, then, you know, how would they remember what I looked like? How would they know that I was getting ready to feed them at a certain time in the morning? They wouldn't. And, you know, that's just, it's completely false. Goldfish do not have to have heaters. Goldfish can tolerate a wide range of temperatures. All my tanks are between like 68 and 72 degrees most days. So they do fine with that. I've never had an issue with that. The only time I've used heaters is when I have fish in quarantine or I'm treating them for something, then I use a heater, but other than that I don't. I do recommend using a heater if your tank falls below like 50 degrees, then you may want to look into that. But, you know, other than that, they're fine. They don't have an issue with temperature generally. So there's all my fish store myths, and there was quite a few, but you wouldn't believe some of the things that, you know, I've heard around here. I have been in a store at one point where an older lady was looking for some more freshwater fish to put in one of her big aquariums, and they were trying to sell her saltwater fish. I mean, just some of these things that you hear, they're lies, and a lot of it, most of it is just because they don't understand. Employees aren't taught really anything other than how to bag a fish. I mean, that's really all they're taught, you know. Take the fish out, net them out, put them in like 1/3 of water, 2/3 of air, then tie the bag. I mean, they don't know anything else about fish, and it's sad, and it really should, they should know what they're trying to sell. People have questions, and, you know, when I first started keeping aquariums and fish, I didn't know anything about them. I mean, first of all, I was 2 years old, so what really did I know? But, you know, as I got older and I was helping my mom with Johnny, there was just some things you had to learn. I didn't know why he had a filter. And you just, it's really, I think, sad part is most of this hobby is self-taught. You're not generally going to have people that, you know, within your immediate family or friends that know anything about this stuff, and you're going to be lost. And the thing about keeping goldfish is that it's a learning process, and you're going to mess up, and you'll learn from it, and that's how the hobby goes. So I hope you enjoyed the video, and be sure to check out my new merchandise. I'll link it below, and I'll see you next time.